Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of My Sunderland 11. As always, we are in association with the Sunderland Food Bank and the Sunderland Fans Museum. Please go and check them out. Links are in the description below. With me, a very, very special guest, another ex-player joining us, but our first ever goalkeeper in 224 appearances from 1978 to 1986. Chris Turner. Chris, how are you?
Good afternoon, Matthew. Very good, thank you. Looking forward to doing the show, and hi to all the Sunderland fans.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. How's your lockdown going?
Well, it's just got used to it, I suppose. My team, or the club I'm trying to start up with, is for 2 seasons now. The seasons have been curtailed, so it's been a little bit frustrating. In normal life, I'm just used to not going anywhere and not seeing anybody or going out to places. I've got a Labrador dog, and I walk him 2.5 hours this morning. He'll want another walk in about an hour, and that's large part of the day. I do a lot of online interviews like this for various things, and I have a bit of interest with a couple of managers in the EFL who I mentor and help. Basically, that's it. Miss the football of actually going to watch, and just waiting for June the 21st, when hopefully everything opens up back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not too long now, but yeah, that's good to hear. My next question really was sort of what you're getting up to now. But as you mentioned it already, you do cover most of the points. But has lockdown sort of badly affected what you were doing before?
Well, yeah, because our season was only 7 or 8 games into it, and then the games got stopped because our club is in West Yorkshire, and the majority of our games were in South Yorkshire. So because of the tier system, we weren't allowed to go over to South Yorkshire to play. So we stopped before the actual lockdown came. A high number of our players are international players from abroad, and so they flew back home. So it's curtailed us a little bit, but we've had some great news just of late. We've got new investors come on board from the US. A major investment, going to put quite a lot of substantial amount of money and support into the club. So it looks as though we're going to get a springboard for us to go forward once. Really now it's for next season, but once next season gets underway, we're hoping that we're going to be in the semi-pro professional level, and with the investment that we're going to receive and support, we're looking then to move up those leagues and try and get round about the national North League in the next 5 or 6 years.
Excellent. Yeah, I think a lot of things are looking up at the moment. We all see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I think we're bombarded with good news actually after after quite a tough year for everyone. So that's fantastic to hear. Chris, I'll just take you sort of right back really. The question I wanted to ask: what are your sort of memories of growing up and just watching football?
Well, I first started watching football when I was 4 years of age. Mum and Dad were big Sheffield Wednesday fans. And I used to go home and away with Mum and Dad. They used to travel around the country. I've stood on Stretford End, at the Cop at Anfield, Chelsea, and various other old grounds that were in those days. And I grew up supporting them, going to school and playing the Sheffield boys, going to watch Wednesday with my mates at 12, 13, 14, 15 years of age. And then 2 or 3 years later, I was playing for them, and that was surreal, really. But football's been my life, as I say, since 4 years of age.
How did you start playing football then? Because I think you said you didn't always want to be a goalkeeper.
I never wanted to be a goalkeeper. Some would say you should never have done it. But no, I used to play for the school team. The school I went to was a small junior school, and we played in a 6-a-side tournament one day, and our goalkeeper failed to turn up, Colin Beresford. I'll remember his name for the rest of my life for obvious reasons. And we weren't a great team, and I went in goal that morning for the tournament, and we took some good hidings. But obviously, I'd done enough in those games for the Sheffield boys manager who was watching the tournament to ask our teacher, what I was all about, and invited me to Sheffield boys under 11s training. And I got into the under 11 team, and then all the way through to 15s as it went up to in those days. I was the number one keeper, and I played for Yorkshire boys at under 16 level. And I trialled and could have signed for Manchester United at 14, but I decided to sign for Sheffield Wednesday at 14, and then left school at 15, which you could in those days. And I took an apprenticeship up for Sheffield Wednesday, and I started in the first team at 17.
Excellent. And then obviously you're at Sheffield Wednesday, and then you get a move to Sunderland. So how did that move to Sunderland actually come about?
Well, after about 18 months of playing in Sheffield Wednesday's first team, my contract was up at Wednesday. Jack Charlton had arrived at Hillsborough at that time, and it was a battle between myself and Bob Boulder. For some unknown reason, Jack wouldn't pick me, or even though players and fans were wanting me in the team, I was a local boy, etc., being a regular. I broken my hand at Christmas. I couldn't get back in the team. And I decided to exercise my rights under freedom of contract. And I had talks with Watford, and I had talks with, I didn't have talks with Sunderland actually. Ken Knighton wanted me to come to Sunderland, who was the then manager. And I had talks with Watford, with Graham Taylor on the Friday, and on the Monday I signed for Sunderland with Ken Knighton.
What were your sort of expectations of going to Sunderland before, and what were they sort of versus reality?
Well, the previous year, when Jimmy Adamson was manager, the chief scout at the time, whose name escapes me, I went over to his house near Rotherham, and Jimmy Adamson wanted to sign me. I don't know what eventually happened with that, but 12 months later, Ken Knighton had then become manager, and Ken, who was my youth team coach at Sheffield Wednesday, took me to Sunderland. I'd only been to Sunderland to play in the youth team at Washington. I'd never visited Roker Park in my life. I was told by Peter Eustace, who was the then coach of Sunderland, when you walk into Sunderland, you'll feel the enormous size of the club when you go through the door. And nothing further said. I went through these big oak doors in Roker Park, up the oak staircase, into a room, and there must have been 30, 40 press guys there for my signing, which was, wow, what's this all about, you know? I was coming to try and get myself into the first team at Sunderland. Barry Siddall was the number one. I'd obviously known about Jim Montgomery and all the history of the 73 team, 6 or 7 years before. And everything was new to me. And I just came with a fresh challenge, and let's go for it.
Absolutely. And obviously your time at Sunderland, you stayed for a lot of years. How do you sort of look back and reflect upon it?
I love my time at Sunderland. I mean, it coincided with my first season. My first game, really, for an official Sunderland team was at Merton on a Saturday afternoon in the Wearside League. And it was the first day of the season. The reserves then played in a Wearside League and the North Midlands League. The first team were playing Fulham at Roker Park in front of 25,000. And I was playing at Merton for Sunderland reserves against, I think it might have been Merton, in front of Man and His Dog. And that was how I started my Sunderland career. 5 or 6, 10 games into the season, I broke into the team and I stayed there till the end of the season, which accumulated in 47, my last game that year. So my first game of that season was at Merton in front of a Man and His Dog. And my last game of that season was 47,000 people at Roker Park, needing a win or a draw to finish second in the league to be for promotion. So what a difference that was.
Absolutely, and you did play in some most incredible games. I think Tottenham away in the Milk Cup in 1985. I mean, that was you saved a penalty in the last minute, and I remember my dad. As soon as my dad starts telling me stories, you're not getting away for an hour, and he was telling me a story about this game, and he just said, we did really well, we were winning, and then get a penalty in the last minute. You think, oh no, but then you made a save. What are your memories of that day?
Well, everybody talks about the Tottenham game, but actually we drew 0-0 at Roker Park in the round of that competition, and that was the best game that I ever played in my life. Was that game at Roker Park, because it was like a shooting practice for Glenn Ogle, Clive Allen, great world-class players at that time, and we drew 0-0. And to be fair, it could have been 6 or 7 to Tottenham on the night. And then we go down to White Hart Lane with nobody expecting us to win and expecting a Spurs victory, and obviously we're on the back foot and everything else. I think we went 1-0 down, and we got back to 1-1, and then Spurs get a penalty kick. No, then we went 2-1 up. Sorry, we went 2-1 up, and then Spurs get a penalty kick very late on into the game, and it's Graham Roberts. And I'm thinking about which way to go, and I always believe if it's a penalty kick on my right-hand side, I'll save it. I'll have a great chance of saving it, because most goalkeepers, 90% of goalkeepers, the favourite side is the right. And I just went full length to the right-hand side. He smashed it as hard as he could, and I managed to keep it out, and we won 2-1, which was fantastic. But everybody talks about the second game, but really the first game, if you watch the highlights of the first game, it's just like save after save, block after block, a bit of luck on the night on several occasions, and it was just one of those games. As a goalkeeper, I could have stood and turned the other way, and the ball would have hit me on the back of the head that night. It was one of them nights, and it was covered on TV. In those days, no live games, and 10 o'clock, 10 at night, they have the highlights of the cup matches, and we were the main game, and I got great coverage from that game and thereafter right up to the final.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did play in the final, and how do you sort of reflect on that game? Because obviously it was a disappointing match for a lot of Sunderland supporters, but how do you reflect on that game?
Well, it wasn't a great game. Cup finals generally aren't great games. It was a deflected goal off Gordon Chisholm, and an unfortunate goal for David Corner for obvious reasons. And we missed a penalty with Clive Walker in the late stages of it. Otherwise, it could have gone to extra time, and who knows, a replay. I think we had replays in those days. Not a lot of goalmouth action at either end. A game to forget, but not a game to forget for Norwich, but obviously one for us. And the thing about it, we both got relegated 2 months later.
Yeah.
And a bit ironic, really. Stevie Bruce, and then I teamed up with Steve Bruce 6 or 8 months later at Manchester United.
Yeah, Chris, what I wanted to ask about that game was, and something that really stands out to me, obviously, for someone that I wasn't even there to experience that, was the Sunderland fans singing that day. And it was so loud when the teams came out. And even when Norwich were going to go take the trophy, the Sunderland fans were still singing.
Well, I mean, I've always, said about Sunderland supporters, Roker Park was an unbelievable atmosphere on on Tuesday nights. One of my first few games, in fact, going right back to when we were talking about my very first game for the first team was against Manchester City at Roker Park. And that was the first impression that the supporters got of me. It was an absolutely rain-sodden night, non-stop rain from start to finish, but we win 1-0 and went through once again. That was a League Cup competition, not the same competition, might I add, but Roker Park on a night was a great atmosphere. The full well end when it was full was unbelievable, and they took that to Wembley in that cup final, and passionate supporters. massively passionate supporters. The North East is full of passionate supporters. It's a great hotbed for football and the supporters.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Chris, as someone who's played for multiple different clubs, and obviously you just touched on it there with the supporters, but I'll ask you anyway, what do you think separates a club like Sunderland from maybe other clubs in the Football League and in the Premier League?
Well, the amount of support, because, I mean, people get amazed how big Sunderland is in terms of number of people in the. It was a town in those days, but now it's a city. How big and how heavily supported the club have been. I mean, even now in League One, when crowds were there, there's 25,000, 28,000. It's unbelievable. And there's not been a great deal of success of late. But I think it stems all the way back through history of big crowds in the North East. I'm not so certain on Middlesbrough, but certainly Newcastle and Sunderland have always been passionately and high-numbered in the number of fans that attend the home games. It's been enormous, and it's what people have grown up with, and it's continued through the years. It's home and away. The travelling support has always been high in numbers, and unless you've been there, unless you've played there and experienced, I don't think people realise what a big club Sunderland is, or as big a club as it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing one of my dad's friends heard that when I was going to speak to you, there's always one question that a lot of people have wanted to ask you is why would you leave such a huge club like Sunderland to go to Manchester United?
Well, I think you've answered it. The same question. I mean, there's a difference between Sunderland and Manchester United. I didn't want to leave Sunderland. I'll totally honest, man. I didn't leave for money, that's for sure. And Sunderland were just being relegated, and I had no aspirations to leave. All the stories in the Northern Echo and the Journal and the papers that were out there, where Chris Turner's going to Nottingham Forest, he's going to Arsenal, he's going there, he's going there. I had nothing all summer, absolutely nothing. Frank Burrows was caretaker because Len got sacked after the last home game, which was Ipswich, which was the game I captained the club, which was a great honour for me. And nothing was happening. I was happy to stay. They'd offered me the contract. I was quite happy with what they offered. But to be fair to Frank did say to me at the time, "This is a great chance for you. This is an opportunity when it comes. There'll be some clubs will come for you, but nobody came." And I was sitting at home one afternoon, and this is no word of a lie. I said to my wife on the Sunday afternoon, I said to her, "Do you know, there are no mobile phones in these days?" I said, "Do you realise that phone, meaning the house phone, has not rang for 2 days?" And as I said that, as I finished that sentence, the phone actually rang. And I went and picked it up, and it was Martin Edwards, the chairman of Manchester United. And he asked me if I would be interested in coming down tomorrow, which was Monday, to speak to Manchester United. Well, obviously you are. It's one of the greatest, if not the greatest clubs in the world. And I went down to Manchester United, and I actually signed for Manchester United for the same money that Sunderland had offered me to stay at Sunderland, and they offered me more signing on money. But that was the only difference in the deal. And at Sunderland, I was the number one goalkeeper. So going to Manchester United, I was going to be the number two behind Gary Bailey, who was England's number two. So once again, I'd had a tough start to get into the team at Sunderland because Barry Sidor was a top-class goalkeeper and he was the number one. Now I'm taking that now down to Manchester United. I've got a battle for the place in the team, and I was leaving Sunderland, which I was gutted about leaving. But in life, you get several decisions in life. Certainly in the job that you work in, where you'll have a number of key important decisions in your life where you have to make a decision which may not be, taking you out of a comfort zone and putting you into another position. And the bottom line was, I didn't want to sit back today speaking to you, Matthew, and say, one time I had a chance to go to Manchester United, but I decided not to. I'd be kicking myself because you don't know what's going to happen, what could have happened, etc., etc. And they might have started the season next season for Sunderland, got injured and never played again. So, you know, you have all these thoughts, and I thought, well, there are a lot of international players there. Your Robsons, your Stapletons, your Strackens, your Olsons, your Morans, your McGraths, you know, all international footballers. I've got an opportunity to go and train and play with them. And Ron Atkinson, there wasn't a bigger character in the game in terms of management. So I felt I had to take the opportunity.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone can blame you for that, Chris. And as you say, it's all, if you didn't do it, then it's the sort of what if, what if I didn't do that? And you played for both clubs, and you did play very well, at both. So I don't think anyone can blame you, really. Obviously, you played for quite a few clubs. Do you still sort of now, where you are and what you're doing now, look back at the team's results and see how they're all doing?
All the time, all the time. I love coming to the Sunderland games. I generally try and get once or twice a season. Monty invites me whenever I can get. I always look at the results obviously Wednesday. I live in Sheffield now, so I see their results. I close my eyes these days and look at their results. Manchester United, I had a couple of games on loan at Leeds when Howard was manager. Leyton Orient was there 3-4 years. And Hartlepool are managed, and I look at all the clubs with great affection, and they enjoyed my time at all my clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. And just want to ask you, really, just going back to Sunderland, how do you think things are going now? In your opinion, how do you think they're going now at Sunderland?
Well, I think there's great expectations now. A new owner has arrived. It's a new beginning. It's an opportunity. It's also going to be interesting to see how it works out, because the guy's only 23 years of age. I know he's been brought up in a footballing family. His dad, his late father, owned a top club in Europe. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all works out. Lee Johnson, the manager, I've always respected Lee, and I think the work that he's done certainly at Barnsley and Bristol City has been excellent. And I think the team is now getting to grips with his ideas and what he wants, and the results and the number of goals going in now has increased. And I think that chasing down the two teams at the top is a strong possibility now. Certainly, playoffs are going to be well in sight. But the only downside, the only greyish area regarding any takeover is how they run the club going forward. Only time will tell. I can only speak of Sheffield Wednesday at the moment. It's great when the guy took over. We're now 5 years down the line. It's been one of the worst things ever for the club, in my opinion. Hopefully that's not with Sunderland in 3 or 4 years' time. Up there, when it's foreign investment in and running a club, you just don't know what's going to happen. But hopefully now Sunderland can settle down and move forward. And as you ask, I always look for the result with great interest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great to hear. And just for Sunderland fans as well, so many years of just awful football and bad seasons, and now hopefully we've got a bit of hope back and a bit of optimism, and these new owners can come in, and hopefully we can look forward to a good history at least. I've got one more question, Chris, before we go through your Sunderland 11. Now, in your own words, what does Sunderland AFC mean to you?
Well, it means to me 5 or 6 years of really loving football, enjoying playing, great times. Even though they were hard, that we were battling and thinking at least 2 or 3 of those years against relegation, and winning on 2 occasions. I think it was Manchester City or Everton at home on one game of the season, winning away 2-0 at Leicester. To stay in the first division, and the cup run and the supporters, and my son Jamie was born there, and so was Natalie. So they were born in Sunderland, and my wife and I really thoroughly enjoyed living there for 5.5, 6 years that we lived there, And we go back now, and we walk along the seafront at Roker and walk up to South Shields along the front with great, great feeling and great thoughts of Sunderland itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, lovely way to put it, and I'm sure a lot of Sunderland fans would love to hear that. All right, then. So we'll look back at your greatest Sunderland memories going through your Sunderland 11. So we'll start off in goal now. I'm a little bit disappointed you didn't put yourself in there, but who did you put in?
Well, I put Barry down. I'm looking at players while I were there, and I know from the boys that I put in, there's boys who I haven't put in could easily so be it. I mean, but I put Barry in because Barry was a great character, and he made me most welcome when I first came to the club. And he was a joker in the dressing room, and he was a very, very good goalkeeper, and I take great pride in that I battled with him for the position, and that I eventually claimed the number one spot at Sunderland. But in all the time that we were together, and we roomed a lot together at that time, and I've never seen anybody so funny and just great for the lads was Barry in the dressing room.
Yeah, and that's the thing with keepers, because I think a lot of people looking back, it was sort of you battling against him for that sort of number one spot. So it's good to hear that you did have a pretty good relationship with him, though.
Oh, it was well, when you're goalkeeper, there's generally only two people for the position. In the game today, they have 3 and 4, even in the same team, battling away for the position. And lots of people think, "Oh, I bet you don't get on with him. I bet you don't like each other." But no, I think there is a lot of respect between goalkeepers because you do a lot of training together. There's only one person can play in the team, and you get used to being around each other. One of the funniest moments ever, Barry might not want me to remind you of this, is that when we went to Switzerland, just before Barry left the club, Barry was out of contract and Newcastle were all over, apparently in the papers, were all over taking Barry to Newcastle. Barry wanted to go, I think, and everything. And we were going on tour to Switzerland. And obviously I was rooming with Barry. And when we get to the hotel in Switzerland, Barry's opens his suitcase up in the room and he's got a brand new Newcastle United wash bag, Newcastle United towel, anything to do with Newcastle, he had it in there. It was just that sort of guy, And while we were out there the very first night, in the next morning in the Journal, I think it was, the morning paper in them days, there was a big article by Barry regarding going to Newcastle. Well, when Ken had heard that, the manager, Ken Knighton, had heard about that next morning. We'd only been there one night. When we got the next morning, we get a phone call to the room, and it's from Peter Eustace, I think, saying to Barry, the boss wants to see you, wants a meeting now, immediately, come down. So before he's going down, he's like, well, that's the call. I'm off to Newcastle. They made the offer. Here we go. There we go. So he came back 15 minutes later. His face was drawn. He says, I've been sent home, Chris. I said, what about? He said he's read an article I've done in the paper, and it's gone in this morning, and Ken's seen it, saying about me Newcastle and all this, and I would love to play for him and all that. He said, if that's it, you want to play for him, you get off home and leave immediately today. So Barry left and left that day. And then he didn't end up at Newcastle. I think he went to Darlington and places like that for a while until he got settled, Port Vale and places like that. But it was such a funny guy that I put him in my team.
That's fair enough. It's an interesting story. I think a lot of Sunderland fans hearing that, you might not be too impressed with Barry Siddle now, but yeah, that's fair enough.
That sort of character, because he would love to play for Sunderland. Don't get me wrong. He's not saying, I weren't saying I want to play for Newcastle instead of Sunderland. It was just a situation. He was out of the team the previous season because I got into the team, and his contract was up, and he wanted the opportunity, and he just thought it would be a great bit of a laugh and banter with the lads to turn up with all the Newcastle stuff. You see, so there you go. But that was Barry. That was Barry.
Excellent. Yeah, fantastic story there. All right, then we'll go to your next player you got in the team. We'll start with your fullbacks first. So we'll go over to the right back. Who have you got there?
You tell me. No, it's Barry Venison. Barry Venison. I put Barry down. I mean, Barry Venison was a young boy who came into the team, and he went on to have a great career with England under 21s, etc. I don't know if he may have got an England cap. I'm not sure, but he played a number of great seasons at Liverpool. He was a young boy coming through the youth team, got into the first team. He could play midfield, and him and Nicky Pickering, for instance, when they were at certain time playing in the fullback areas, were great going up and down the flanks in those days.
Yeah,
absolutely. Steve Whitworth, who was the right back when I first went there, what a quality and super professional guy he was. And Joe Hinnigan, who played left back but could play right back, was a tremendous player as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think Barry Venison, went on to play for Liverpool after Sunderland, and then to a lot of Sunderland fans' horror, went to Newcastle and actually did quite well for them.
Yeah, he did. Well, I mean, he was a likeable character in the dressing room. He was a bit of a lad, bit of a Jack the Lad. He was a young boy. He was a trendy dresser, and his blonde flowing locks. He was just a great lad.
Yeah, fantastic to hear. All right, then we'll switch now to your at the left back position. Who have you got there?
I think I've got Joe Bolton. Yeah.
Joe Bolton, left back. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got Joe. But I mean, Joe was a great lad. I mean, they're all great lads. Joe was a local lad, Chester Street. Used to come to the training ground. Used to bring his two dogs, Chip and Tag, two greyhounds. He thought the absolute world of them dogs. But Joe was a no nonsense, powerful left back, took no prisoners, and was a local lad once again who gave everything whenever he played. He was a fan's favourite. Joe Hinnigan took a while to replace Joe, but Joe, I put Joe down as my player.
We'll go now to your central defenders. So do you want to talk us through who you've gone with there?
Well, I've gone with Jeff Clark and Sean Elliott, who predominantly were in the early days the two centre backs. Both very consistent. Sean was fast. He if he made any mistake, he had the pace to be able to come back. Jeff Clark, who when I got there was coming back from a very serious knee injury, which he then reoccurred further down the first season in a massive game at Cardiff where we drew 1-1. Took 15,000 fans to Cardiff that day. They were good, honest centre backs, good partnership. Coming through a year or two later was the late Rob March, who then became the youngest, I think, the skipper of the team. Rob could easily have gone in there at times. He was outstanding for a young player to be put into a strong Sunderland team. Sam Allardyce, who came, Ken Knighton, I think Ken signed Sam Allardyce. He wasn't there too long. The biggest memory I can think of Sam Allardyce was we played the Trendy Boys from London, Terry Venables, Crystal Palace at Roker Park, and at the scoreboard end, Roker end, towards the clock stand, he tackled Vince Hilaire, who was the so-called superstar of that team coming. He hit Vince Hilaire so hard that I saw Vince 3 years ago and says he still feels that tackle from 30 years ago. It was a tackle. It was one of them tackles, ball in the man. But the man ends up flying up in the air, crashing against the ground. And Vince was last seen going down the players' tunnel with his arms around two guys lifting him down the tunnel. It was an incredible tackle. And Sam was such an incredible player, such a confident boy, great to play with, strong leader, commanding. But I went with Jeff and Sean because I thought they complemented each other well.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to ask about Jeff Clark. Now, when he was at Sunderland, he wasn't offered a new contract, and all the Sunderland fans thought he was a really good player, and they were surprised why he didn't. And he actually left the club and went to Newcastle, which were actually in the division below. So, what do you remember about that?
Well, I mean, it's strange, isn't it? How many players? When we talk about Barry Siddle, we talk about Jeff Clark. Newcastle seem to quite like taking players off Sunderland for some reason or not. But no, I mean, it's one of those situations. Jeff had got injured again in the first season I was there. Did he get back to those great heights of playing before? Did people, management at the time, think that we needed somebody who's 100% fit? He'd had 2 serious knee injuries. Had Jeff, but he was Yorkshire boy. He was Jeff. What a lovely guy. I think he's a physio now at Dundee still. He's still involved in football as a physio. I don't know. It was a strange one, but we had a good side at Sunderland, and Newcastle were below us. So obviously, if there's any players coming out of Sunderland at that time, it may be a good time for Newcastle in those days to have picked them up.
Yeah, do you know what I think? I think as well. I've actually realised that it's still sort of. Well, I mean, when we were in the Premier League, they were still doing it. They were sort of taking players that played for something like you could say Jack Colback, Ki Sung Young, Javier Manquillo. They were still doing it. DeAndre Yedlin. You can name many players that they're clearly obsessed with Sunderland. You could say that. Also, his defensive partner as well, Sean Elliott. Now, obviously, a big game we sort of spoke about earlier was the Milk Cup final. He missed that game due to suspension, and I think we played. He was an 18-year-old centre back in that game.
Corner.
David Corner. Yeah. So, do you think Sean Elliott was a big miss in that game?
Well, not to run David Corner down, but Sean was a key member of the team, and it was a feud at Stamford Bridge which got him suspended. Which cost him the opportunity of playing at Wembley in a cup final, which is every player's dream as you're growing up. Wembley today is on every other week in some sort of shape or form.
Yeah.
In those days, Wembley was on twice a season. In those days, was the League Cup final and the FA Cup final. And if he could get in one of them, it was incredible. And we got to one, and unfortunately, Sean, or Sammy we used to call him. Can't remember who was calling him Sammy, but Sean was unavailable. And David Corner played, and he should have let him kick the ball out or whatever. He tried to let it run out, and it didn't. It stayed in. 20 seconds later, the winning goal was scored. But I feel sorry for David because he never lived it down with the fans, and it was always brought up whenever he was out on the town and all sorts of things. But Sean was a big miss in the final. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. You could say that it's very unfortunate for David Corney. Same with sort of Michael Gray. Missed the penalty, and a lot of people remember him. For that at Wembley, where in actual fact they did have a great career at Sunderland. And as you say, it was very prestigious to play at Wembley. There wasn't any Papa John's Trophy final in '85, was there?
No, I mean, another centre half that are missing out there is Gordon Chisholm. Gordon was a Scots lad, a young boy, 19, 20, 21 years of age, and he was a consistent player. Unfortunately, it struck his chest and sent me the wrong way for the winning goal. But no, it was centre halves are vital positions. You need 2 good centre halves, and I picked those 2 because I thought they complemented each other well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a very strong back 4 you got there. We'll go now to your midfield 4. So we'll start off who you have on the left.
Well, I got Nicky Pickering. I mean, could have put Nicky at right back, but Nicky was another young up and coming player on the England under 21s who could run forever. Training sessions, he would have given Steve Crammer a good race in those days. He was so fit, natural athlete, left-footed, and a hard worker up and down the left-hand side. And could have put Leighton James in, who came later and for a season and a bit. Leighton came with great experience, unbelievable character. But I chose Nicky because he was once again another young player who come through the ranks, made it to the first team, made a name for himself in the game, went on to win the FA Cup with Coventry City further down the line. So, he was another player in that cup final, but lost the game, and he did well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he got a cap for England as well, whilst at Sunderland as well. Yeah, so yeah,
I think we have Barry Venison and Nick Pickering, two of the best young fullbacks or right-hand side players in the country at that particular time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so he works his way into your team then. So we'll switch now to who you have on the right wing.
I think I put down Stan Cummings.
Yeah.
Well, I was looking where to play Stan because I put it down as a straight basic 4-4-2. Stan Cummings was an unbelievable magician. I call him a magician of a player who could go past players, who could score vital goals. I mean, Ken Knighton brought him from Middlesbrough, and he scored some very important goals in that first season to gain us promotion. And Stan was a quiet character. Controlling the football was easy for him. He played against the big strapping centre halves. He came up when he was attacking them. He just left them for fun, and a very super talented player. So I can't really think of a out and out right winger that we played with in those days that I could think of. So I thought I'll just slip Stanley out there and see what he can do.
Yeah, I think Stan Cummings is a fantastic choice, and also because in 1980 we beat Newcastle at Roker Park 1-0, and he scored in that game, and we actually didn't beat Newcastle at home for another 28 years until 2008. Yeah. Kieran Richardson scored the free kick, the 2-1. Yeah. So, did you play in that game, the 1980 game against Newcastle?
I presume I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. What do you remember from the derbies?
Losing 3-1, penalty from Peter Beardsley, drawing 0-0, winning 1-0. It's so long ago, 40 years ago, but once again, massive games when you're playing Newcastle home or away. You don't want to lose. You don't want. You just want to beat them. Fortunately, 3 or 4 years at the time there, we were in a higher league, so we didn't play them.
Yeah, exactly. And whenever we have played them recently, we have usually beat them quite a lot of times.
Great results, and especially at St James's Park. I think we went on a run of 3 straight victories there, or something like that. It's just a shame that where they are and where Sunderland are. Who knows? Next season we could meet them in the Championship.
Maybe.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, let's hope so indeed. Yeah. All right then. So we'll go now to your central midfield. Do you want to talk us through who you've got there?
Well, I put Kevin Arnott in because Kevin was yet another player who came through the ranks in those days. He was a real super talented footballer. He didn't hit the heights that his ability warranted or commanded. For Sunderland, he was top draw, and he's probably one of those players that didn't believe enough in himself that could take him on to the next level. He, I wouldn't say he played within himself, but he, if you managed him today, you'd want that little bit more out of him, knowing that he's got it in him. And some days he showed it, some days he didn't. But I thought Kevin Arnott was a super footballer, and I put alongside him Mickey Buckley, because if you're going to have somebody like Kevin in your team, you need somebody who's going to be a worker, a little bit of a destroyer, and Mickey Buckley was that. He was tenacious, put his foot in, would challenge, he's all over the park. A bit of a for the 70 fans, 1973 fans. He's a Bobby Kerr. It's a Bobby Kerr of the next era. And unfortunately, Mickey died a number of years ago. But he was the soul. He was the soul of the squad in terms of he was great for team spirit, and on the pitch he was a winner, and he always gave 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Mick Buckley did sadly die at the age of 59, 59 back in 2013, which is obviously very very sad. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people remember him for being a fantastic player, and yeah, as you say as well with Kevin Arnott. I think when I speak to my dad, my dad was saying to me, he just wasn't a player that he just didn't get to that bigger and better
He didn't get to
stage
the
in his
next
career.
stage. He didn't get to the next stage. Now, it was just one of those things that that happened to his career, and he fell away too quickly. But he had the ability, and he had the technical ability to go so much further.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that is a very good midfield you got there, though, with the four midfielders. So we'll go now to the striker position, the people you're going to rely on to score most of the goals. Do you want to talk us through who you've gone with there?
Well, Brian Pop Robson I put down because he was the best finisher that I ever played with, trained with. He was absolutely magnificent. And when he came back to Sunderland for the second time, when I was there, he was well into his 30s. But he was a sharp. His father-in-law, Lenny Eppel, who did a lot of work with myself at the time, had sharpened Brian up. When he was at Newcastle, he was on his way out of the club at Newcastle on a free transfer, and his father-in-law took him to one side and said, "Look, Pop," as we all called him, you're going out the game fast. He said, "I can help you," and he laughed. Brian thought, "What's he talking about?" But he worked with him on sharpness and movement and everything else, and he got him in that penalty box. There was nobody better. He was latched onto anything, great technique, and he went on to become the coach. He coached, but it was great for the young lads as well. And I was a young lad; I was only 20, 21. It was, we used to laugh at, have a laugh with him, and as he was like the granddad of the team. But he was so focused, so fit, so sharp. And you've got, even at his age, he got annoyed if he didn't score on a Saturday afternoon, and he was outstanding. It was outstanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you did, when you sent me your team, you did put next to him in brackets, I think his like super sub, didn't you, in Gary Rowell?
Well, I put Gary down because Gary was a great finisher. Gary was a great player. Unfortunately, when I got there, he received an injury the previous season, and it took him a while to get back to his best. But Gary was a finisher. Did he lose a bit of pace from his injury? I don't know so much because I didn't see him before. But he wasn't over blessed with pace. But he knew where to be, and he knew where the back of the net was. And that's the most important thing for the striker. And he was calm. Once again, a local lad. I mean, I'm saying it. The number of local young players that were in and around the first team when I was at Sunderland, it was fantastic. And Gary was another one that had come through the land, a Seaham boy. And it was a shock to us all when Lenny gave him a free transfer, because we were dropping down to the second division, as it was in them days. And, somebody like Gary Rowell in the second division could have caused a lot of damage in front of goal. But Leonard decided to move him on. And we were in a hotel room in Magaluf at the end of the season, Gary and I. And I always remember that week for two things. One, he received a phone call from home that a letter had come the morning that we'd left to go to Spain, saying that he'd been freed. And two, that it absolutely pissed it down every day that we were there that week. It was unbelievably bad weather. We got relegated. We'd lost the cup. And Gary had been freed.
Yeah, I mean, it just proves really what a great player Gary Rowell actually was for a younger fan like myself. And I mean, a lot of Sunderland fans, who were born in early 2000s and 90s, we all know who Gary Rowell is. That's probably because of his song. Yeah, have you heard the Gary Rowell song that we sing?
No.
Basically, it's in the tune of the Beatles' Yellow Submarine song. So
Right.
we go number 1 is Gary Rao, number 2 is Gary Rao, and it goes up to number 12. And then we're all jumping around. Everyone's throwing their beers everywhere. We all live in a Gary Rao world, and we all sing that song now, and it just proves really that even I know his name. Everyone else knows his name, and that's only testament to how good he actually was.
Well, I mean, I think it's great when you're a local lad and you get into your local team, and the supporters really appreciate what you've done for the club. And Gary was so laid back. Fame never he never took to the fame. He was just so laid back, and he was an excellent servant for the club in those days.
Yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
My other striker, did I put John Hawley?
Yeah.
Well, I put John Hawley down. I could have put Lee Chapman down possibly as a big striker, but I put John down because John was a brute of a striker. He had pace. He was fast. He was powerful. He could strike a ball. I can remember him scoring against Arsenal at Roker Park from about 30 yards. He could hit a ball, and John was totally different. John used to come in the dressing room at 1:45, sit down in the corner, read a book till about 2:50, not go out for the warm-up with everybody else. He'd read his book, put his book down, get changed and go out and play. I mean, you can't do that today.
Yeah.
But that was John. And he did have hamstring problems, so that's one of the reasons why. But John was a striker, and I felt, if you've got Pop up there who's an aging striker, you need somebody powerful and strong up there with him. I think they played together quite a bit when they were both at the club, and I just felt them as a front two would do well for that sort of team in that sort of era,
Yeah, I think Johnny. He was. I think remember he scored a really. I saw. I don't remember. I saw on YouTube that he scored a really good goal against Arsenal. And then he actually went on to play for Arsenal after leaving Sunderland.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, John. I mean, I think we signed him from Leeds, and he was a great signing for us, and he wasn't what you would call the greatest trainers. But a lot of the strikers weren't the greatest trainers because their trait was in the box. And John was decent in the box, but John was one of them strikers who could score from outside the box with a strike. But he would run the channels and he would work hard up the front. And once again, he was a quiet lad. I don't know if he went into a state agency or something along those, or antiques, along those sort of lines in later times in life. But a good lad around the dressing room. And I think that side in that era was a decent League One team.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've got your team going across the bottom there. It is a fantastic team, you can just see it there in front of you. Now, with every team, you need a manager. So, would you like to tell us who you've picked to manage this team?
I picked Alan Durbin as manager because Alan Durbin was a very good manager. He got the team to play. He joined in all the training. He was a good man manager of players. Had he got that from Brian Clough, I would have thought so. He'd won the championship with Derby County a few years in his playing career. He put together a good side, and as always, maybe it's 2 or 3 players short of having, it's like there was like a wall in League One where Sunderland, we just couldn't get over that wall halfway up the league, say. We'd have a good start to the season, we'd fall away, we'd have a decent middle, then fall away, and then we'd have a good Easter and end of the season, which kept us up on 2 or 3 occasions. But we just couldn't put it all together, which probably would have been Alan getting those 2 or 3, 4 players in at a particular time that would have made the difference. He brought Frank Worthington and Leighton James, great signings in that particular season. I mean, Frank Worthington at Roker Park was just outstanding. Away from home, don't take him. But at home, it was outstanding, was Frank. Leighton James, he could talk a glass eye to sleep with his with how good he was and what he could do to full backs and everything else. But he could deliver quality crosses. He gave the young players confidence. Great in the dressing room. And he there were great signings. And when you read Alan's book, he mentioned certain players, which I think if he could have brought to the club, he would have had a longer time in management at Roker Park and would have been, how successful, I don't know, but I think he would have got us over that wall and we would have been competing in the top half on a consistent basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people have said, David Jones, who I know you did a video on with the club's official YouTube. Yeah. He said when he started supporting Sunderland, Alan Durban was the manager, and obviously fantastic memories that he made for some Sunderland fans.
Well, yeah, I mean, he talked sense. He talked football sense, did Alan, and he didn't give you no garbage. He told it how it was, and he'd had great experience under Brian Clough, and he would relate some of those things. I remember when I fractured my skull at Norwich, and I was stretchered off straight in an ambulance, straight down into the hospital, and it was the worst part of my life, was that. And I was laid in the bed in the hospital, and behind the curtain, in pops Alan Durban. God, and I opened my eyes and I looked and I said, "How did we go on, boss?" He says, "Oh, we've lost 2-0, Chris. Nicky Pickering had got in goals that day." And he said, "We've lost 2-0. He says, "But don't worry about that." He said, "Listen," he said, "the trip's already booked." He said, "You're the first player on the plane going to Magaluf, May the 13th. Make sure you get yourself fit and well for that trip, son." And that's how Alan was. He looked after his players, and he was a good man manager. And unfortunately, I just don't think he was given the tools that his experience and quality deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think some of the fans do remember him for being a fantastic manager, and I'm sure he'd be a great manager managing this team for you. Well, Chris, this pretty much does bring us to the end after you telling us your team and the manager. I want to say thank you very much for coming on. I've really enjoyed it. How have you found it?
Well, great. Just thinking about those players. 40 years ago. Those players were playing for Sunderland, and 40 years is a long time. And for anybody that I've missed out, it wasn't on any purpose or anything. I could have picked new players, other players in those positions from the time I was there in the 6 seasons. So I apologise for anybody that I've missed out. And let's hope that the new regime at Sunderland is successful and can get back to the Premier League ASP.
Yeah, as you said, it is difficult to try and narrow down an 11. And as you said, you had to give some honourable mentions. Talk about Sam Allardyce, had to talk about Gary Rowell, and they weren't even in the team. So it just shows how many, good players that we have actually had. Yeah, one question that I always ask everyone just before we do finish: do you have a message for the Sunderland supporters watching?
Keep the faith. Every club has its ups and downs. I think the club's now on the upturn. I think you've got a great manager. I think he'll play some great football for you. And I think with a new owner, new impetus, new money, the past will be shoved into the past. Forget the past, because the past doesn't win you anything. Going forward, be on the front foot. Get behind that team. I know they will do in the first game of the next season, or if they're still can get in there this season. Get behind the club as you always do, and let's hope for better things. I'm sure they're just around the corner.
Yeah. Hopefully so. Keep the faith, everyone, and hopefully we'll be there soon. As always, video is an association with the Sunderland Food Bank and the Sunderland Fans Museum as well. Go check them out. All the links are in the description below, so make sure you go and check them out. But for now, everyone, please do stay safe, and we'll be back in the stadium soon. We'll see you on the next episode. Away the lads.